As I read through the Gospel of Luke, I came through a story of a woman whose name is not given. She is described according to her past by people in her community in a word that has been used many years, so many times, to define and to describe certain people: a sinner. And it caught my attention because it reminded me of the fact that so many people are described and defined by what they did and their past. And it brought me back to a very sad realization of how easy it is to be labeled. But also it got me thinking about the unnamed and the unseen women in history and in the present time, whose stories got lost somewhere in other people's description of them. And I want to dedicate this video, and I want to dedicate this reflection today to those millions of women whose names we do not even know, but even sadly, whose names we don't seem to care to know. Sometimes, even in our usage of language and our choice of words and the tone of our demeanor, it almost seems as if we don't think that their names even matter. Their names are hidden in the events of the happenings of life, in the terrors of the mess, and in what they had to do, what they were forced to have to do to survive. They could actually explain their story, but really, even if they could, will we really listen? Can we truly listen to their words if we never took the time to listen to their silence? So allow me to take these few minutes of your time to highlight a unique quality that reveals tremendous strength in a portion of reading: audacity. Not impudence, not insolence, not even rude, not disrespectful. I'm talking about the other side of audacity, a willingness to take a bold risk. I'm talking about bravery and boldness. I want us to allow ourselves to be challenged by this nameless woman with a questionable past. In the 7th chapter of the Gospel of Luke, we read a story with the title that in itself is strange, titled Jesus Anointed by a Sinful Woman. It captures a particular day when Jesus and his disciples were invited to dine at a Pharisee whose name was Simon. And as they sat to dine, a woman entered, just in J, and she is described in these words, and I quote: "When a woman who had lived a sinful life in that town learned that Jesus was eating at the Pharisee's house, she brought an alabaster jar of perfume. And as she stood behind at his feet weeping, she began to wet his feet with her tears. Then she wiped them with her hair, kissed them, and poured perfume on them." Close quote. That's Luke chapter 7, verse 37 and 38. This woman did something society deemed unacceptable. She entered a gathering of religious folks. Jesus, a rabbi, his disciples, a Pharisee, and probably with his guests or even his family. I think it is fair to say that this sinful woman entered a rather holy gathering without an invitation. Not only does she do that, but she also goes on and touches the Messiah Jesus. And to the surprise of everyone who was there, Jesus doesn't stop her. And when the Pharisees saw that Jesus doesn't do what is expected of him to do, he questions the prophetic ministry of Jesus in saying, and I quote, "This man," referring to Jesus, "if this man was a prophet, he would know who's touching him and what kind of a woman she is, that she is a sinner," close quote. The assumption is really there is no way that someone as holy as Jesus could want to be associated with such a sinful person. That's the assumption. I don't want us to find ourselves focusing on those who knew her from the past. Nor do I want us to focus on evaluating her qualification to touch Jesus. But I do want to mention something very quickly in passing. Isn't it amazing, though, that people could be offended by God's acceptance of other people? In moments like this, I am really glad that certain people are not God, because some of us would never have tasted mercy or even grace. But I love and respect what this unnamed woman did. She knew she couldn't be invited to these gatherings. She knew how she was labeled and how she was perceived. This woman knew she was judged, and she knew the grounds of judgment. She knew that they would talk about her. They would accuse her of wanting to touch Jesus for other reasons beside religious reasons. But I think she came to that point where she just didn't care anymore. I think she realized that people will always talk about her past. And somehow, no matter what she did to try to move on, they wouldn't move on. I think this unknown, unnamed woman with a questionable past was tired of fearing what people will say. And like the woman with the issue of blood in the Gospel of Mark, this woman pulls herself together and went uninvited into a gathering of men really who don't have any respect for her. She had the audacity to go, even though fear wanted her to stay. We take it for granted the level of strength it takes to do what you have to do in the midst of haters, in the midst of judgment, in the midst of criticisms and jealousy and people who wish and hope that you fail. It's a mental strength that is displayed here when you start doing what you must do, because you know people will always have their opinions of you even if you don't do it. I suppose she figured something. Maybe in the back of her mind she thought, well, they already don't like me anyway, I might as well just go. I don't know what was going on in her mind. But please don't misunderstand this woman. Don't miscalculate her bravery, and please do me a favor. Don't think that she came to dinner to eat. She wasn't there to try to explain herself to certain people. She came to have a one-on-one silent conversation with Jesus in a crowd. Yes, she came to have a conversation in silence in a crowd. I appreciate and respect what she did. I love her audacity to push back when finally she realized she has always been pushed. You see, there's a lot to learn from this woman's strength, and I don't want to spoil the rest of the story for you when you read it later on personally. But please note, this woman didn't utter a word. but she said everything she wanted to say to the only person that mattered in that space. And Jesus saw her, and Jesus felt her story, knew what she was saying, and heard her plea. Then Jesus said to her, "Your faith has saved you. Go in peace." May we come to know that there are many unknown and unseen and unnamed women around us with this and many other shades of strong and strength that we always have to lean on. May we gather strength to do what God has called us to do in our communities without fearing what others will say. May we come to know that there is peace that comes to this kind of audacity. And like this unknown woman, may we come to take those steps of faith into the unknown, to walk through the discouraging feelings, to walk through the hurtful statements that are said, to walk through the critics, through the pains, through the self-doubt, through the well-known judgment, and yes, through being misunderstood. May we come to see God at work in our space, in our lives, but may we also grow to respect and to honor all women, those that we know of their tremendous names and legacies that they have left behind, but also with those who don't have legacies, who are just in the shadows of all that is wrong, of all that is abused, and of all that is victimized.